Journey of the World Unseen as a story is kind of reflects my own journey, I think, in terms of career path, because it started as a novel, which is where I began as a writer, as a short story writer and novelist.
Shamim Sarif has deep roots in South Africa, where her parents and grandparents were born and raised. It was this heritage that inspired her first award-winning novel, The World Unseen, and the film of the same name.
Even though I was brought up in London, because my parents left in the early 60s because of apartheid, those stories of the growing up, the food, the language, Afrikaans is my parents' second language really, was very present to me in London. The transition from novelist to director was, it's a big leap, because as a novelist you're kind of master of your own universe, and you're completely in control of the characters and their emotions and the interpretation. But what I really loved about directing was the collaboration.
Now wearing the title writer-director with ease, Shamim's journey began by trying the traditional industry routes to turn her screenplay into a low-budget independent film. After a couple of years, she decided to produce the film herself, and together with her partner Hanan Katan, started Enlightenment Productions. But the nature of the industry meant that finding financing for her independent film was tough.
Because at the end of the day it's a business, and you need to know that you're going to sell enough tickets or enough DVDs to get back your basic funding. So we had originally started out with a mid-range budget, I would say, and we looked at doing a co-production with South African money, with UK tax money, various different structures. But we were always got to sort of the 80% mark, 90% mark, could never find that final slot that we needed. So I think Hanan's genius was coming in and slashing the budget to a point where it looked undoable. And then approaching private equity, because on the budget we have, as long as it was sort of a modest success, and DVD sales are reasonable, there was a very good chance of recouping and making money for that. How she managed to do that was interesting, in that she outsourced to India. So we were trying to do things on a budget that shouldn't really have been done on that budget, like shooting on film, shooting for 30 days, doing a period drama, which involves a lot of extra cost and input.
Shamim and her team outsourced a 35mm camera and a crew of about 17, all from her family's country of origin, India. She found that the cost of bringing them to South Africa and putting them up for the 30 days of filming still cut their original budget in half.
So we went down to a budget that we thought would be more sort of manageable for finding private investors. And then we decided to go the private equity route. So we found a couple of private investors out of London who happened to be women, very savvy businesswomen, who were just in love with the project and in love with the message of The World Unseen. We didn't go into it going, we only want to work with women, but it turned out that the two investors happened to be women. I think it's also a very strong women's project, in terms that the two leads are women. There's a strong story of female empowerment there. So I think naturally women tended to gravitate towards it.
On circuit in South Africa at the moment, The World Unseen is very specific in its time and place.
It's 1950s South Africa. Apartheid is just being solidified into laws. And you have a couple of really, I think, interesting women characters. One who's more traditional, one who's quite rebellious. And when they meet and sparks fly, I think the influence that they have on each other begins to reflect in the movie's core.
Veteran South African actress Greta Fox had the following to say about the local industry.
I'm hoping there is a market. You know, we're still testing the film. I am really hoping that this film is going to be supported by South African audiences, and they'd rather see an American film than a South African film, because they're assuming that our South African films are inferior, and that is no longer the case.
After starting Enlightenment Productions, Shamim realized that selling the film and producing the soundtrack to her own movie were the next hurdles. She set up a sales and record company under the umbrella name Enlightenment, meaning that her new company has now become a real one-woman show.
I would say to other aspiring filmmakers, don't give up. You have to have passion. You have to be sure that your work is good. So don't be afraid of sending it out there and getting feedback.
I just want to know you better. I'm just a housewife and a mother. Doesn't a housewife have thoughts and feelings and wishes just like everyone else?
It's a new day. It's a new